Hello everyone, Anthony here, and welcome to another edition of The Interview Show. And this week we have legendary filmmaker Larry Cohen on the show. And Mark conducted this interview, and wow, what an interview, guys. This was a great interview. A stand-up guy, so happy that he gave us the time to talk about films, to talk about his legendary craft. What else is there to say? In this interview, we also discussed the brand new documentary about his life and his filmmaking career, called King Cohen. We're going to get right into the lengthy discussion. We're going to bring it over to Mark.
There's a new documentary about your life and your career.
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah. How'd that come to be?
How do I know? The guy called me up and said he wanted to do a documentary. I'd never heard of it before in my life.
Yeah.
I said, as long as I don't have to put up any money.
Okay.
Go ahead and do whatever you want to. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear about it.
Oh.
I don't want any input. You just do what you want to do, and I'll see it when it's finished.
Oh, okay.
And that's what happened.
Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. I saw it up in Montreal, and I saw it in New York.
Okay.
And it opens in New York today, in Greenwich Village.
Oh, excellent.
Regular run. Today's the premiere weekend. This week is the premiere week. I guess it opens Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll play in New York on a regular basis. And all the reviews have been amazing. Every review's been good. I haven't had a bad review yet. We're 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, wow. Does it have your own personal stamp of approval?
Not entirely, but
okay.
I don't want to criticize it for anything. There were things left out that I would have put in, but it's pretty hard to cover everything I've done.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll just begin with I guess pretty safe kind of question. Now, out of everything that you've done, had your name on, directed, writing, whatever, what would you say that you're most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of the whole body of work. I mean, I don't know too many people who have been able to write, produce, and direct and edit their own movies.
No.
And turn out over 20 movies. So, we did turn out over 20 pictures.
Yeah.
That I controlled them completely in every way and had nobody with any input but me. And then I has about another 26 movies besides that I wrote that I sold the scripts. Mm-hmm. And most of the times they ruined the script. That's why I directed my movies, because I wasn't happy with the work that was done when I just sold the screenplays. But, money's money.
Right.
And I hate to turn down something.
Right.
And I can't possibly direct everything I write, so might as well sell them.
Hey, right, absolutely. What's the best advice anyone ever gave you about filmmaking?
Get out of the business.
Get out of the business?
I didn't pay any attention to them. People always try and discourage you,
Yeah.
You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't make your own films, you can't,
mm-hmm.
You can't shoot in New York because it's too expensive.
Right.
And that's where I shot most of my movies, in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those pictures that I made would have cost 7 or 8 times as much if they were made by a studio.
Yeah.
But the only way I could have complete autonomy was to make pictures at a low price,
mm-hmm.
and have complete control of everything and deliver the picture. And so many of them went into profits. About 7 or 8 of them went into profits.
Wow.
And that's a pretty good average out of 20.
Yeah.
And I made money on all the pictures. I paid myself fees for directing and producing and writing. So I made money on every picture I made. And as I say, 7 or 8 of them have gone into profits over the years, and some of them are almost 50 years old. I'm still getting checks.
Wow.
So it ain't bad.
No, not at all. Now, how did you go about getting funding for your films?
Oh, well, I went to some of the companies that existed in those days where there was a person in charge who could give you an order for a film.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to go before a committee. That was before all these corporations took over the movie studios. And now there's so many people involved in every decision that you have to go through a board before you can get a yes or no on anything. And I couldn't probably do the same thing today because there's just too many people involved.
Right.
And even when I was making the pictures, if I wanted to write a new scene or change a location or write a new character in, I could do it. without having to go get approvals from everybody. Today, by the time you got the approvals, a week would go by and you couldn't do it anymore. The time had run out. But in my day, if I wanted to change the schedule, there was no schedule. It was whatever I said it was.
That's interesting, yeah, because today it seems that it may be easier to make a film because the technology is more available to regular people. Like anybody can film with, their phone even these days. But like you said, it may be...
You shoot a movie on a phone, sure you can. The question is, what do you do with it when you get it finished?
Right, yeah.
Who's going to distribute the picture?
Exactly.
Is it going to go right to Netflix?
Yeah, right.
And Netflix doesn't pay you much money if the picture hasn't had a theatrical run. They don't pay you very much money, so you never get back your investment. And I don't like to take money from people to invest in movies because I know they're never going to get their money back. So even in pictures that I made profits on, if there were investors in there, and there weren't, they wouldn't have gotten their money back. But fortunately, I got the money from the studio that was going to distribute the picture.
Yeah,
that's what I took. I never took money from people who weren't in the business, in the business of distributing films. So they were going to take the money at the box office, and they were going to steal whatever they stole and whatever. They get their money back one way or the other. But outside investors would never see a nickel. So I never took money from outside investors.
Wow, okay. Now, do you have any tips or advice for filmmakers looking to finish under budget?
Well, I would give a piece of advice to filmmakers that when you're shooting a movie, shoot the ending first. Shoot all the big scenes at the end of the picture, all the big action and all the big dramatic scenes. Shoot them right away.
Yeah.
Because if you leave them to the end, by the time you get there, you're short of money and you're short of time. And you're under a lot of time pressure and financial pressure at the end. And the ending is the most important part of the picture, because if 75% of the picture is terrific and the last 25% is a disappointment, people go out of the theater saying it was a lousy movie, and they're not happy. The ending has got to be the best part of the picture, so you send the people out with, kind of an exhilaration. So I advise people when they ask me to shoot the ending at the very beginning. And you know something? They never take my advice. And then after they make the picture, they come back and say, that advice you gave me was right, because we did run out of money at the end. So, but they don't listen.
Yeah.
I found that most of the time people ask you for advice and they pay no attention to what you tell them.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I watched some of your movies recently to bone up because I had, I'd seen a bunch of them, but not recently, but I wanted to have them fresh in my mind. Now, the film God Told Me To, did you have the end in mind when you started writing that? Because it kind of starts with like the very real horror of mass shootings, and then it gets a little bit more, with the alien abduction or supernatural. If you made that movie today, would you try to make it more of a statement about gun violence or just stick with the genre?
No, it was supposed to be about the obsessive belief in God. And, it was ahead of its time.
Absolutely.
Now there's people going around blowing people up and shooting people and saying, God is good. There's the last words they say before they kill you.
Yeah,
so it's not too far from God Told Me To.
Right, yeah. There's actually a line in the movie where someone says, people are too goddamn religious, causing problems. Was that part of your own commentary?
Well, that was part of the commentary.
Yeah.
People who are too religious often are very intolerant of everybody else who isn't of the same religion. And, I feel that's a shame. That religion has caused more wars and violence than anything.
It's very true.
More hatred than anything. And, it's supposed to be the word of Jesus, a God of love and passion and forgiveness. Instead, it's unfortunately it's been a world of violence and prejudice and cruelty. So, if Jesus came back, he'd be appalled at what has been done in his name. All these big ornate churches and Vaticans and other places, has nothing to do with the teachings of Jesus.
Exactly,
Jesus was a little Jewish man in Jerusalem preaching forgiveness and love. And look what it's been turned into. It's been turned into a mockery of itself. So, I made God Tell Me to because I saw all these religious paintings at the London Museum when I was living in London.
Mm-hmm.
And all the paintings of the periods were all financed by the church. So they all had to do with religious themes. And they were so violent. There were people with sticking out of them and slaughters and rapes. And it was just unbelievable, the violence in these religious paintings. I said, my God, this is something that affects me, and I want to do a movie about this. And basically, that was what set me off to do this picture where people are worshiping God and committing atrocious crimes.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Now, this is not necessarily a question, but it's a kind of a comment. There's a shot in the movie very early on where the first shooter falls off the water tower, and then the next shot is like the water tower in Tony LoBianco's window, and he's awaking from like a nightmare. That was like a really great transition. I just wanted to comment on that. It's a really great transition.
Well, I was fortunate. There's a lot of water towers around New York.
Yeah.
It's not the same water tower, but it passes for it.
Yeah, it really was really impressive. Now, about Q, the Winged Serpent, that's a movie that I discovered. I'm in Philadelphia. When I was a kid, there was a UHF station that played those kind of movies like late on Friday nights, and I was flipping through the channels and I just saw, a flying creature, and that grabbed my attention. And the stop motion is something, I'm really big into the Harryhausen movies. Were you a fan of those movies as well? Is that how that came to be?
Well, I was a fan of Harryhausen, and of course my composer Bernard Herrmann, who did It's Alive.
Yeah.
He did a number of Harryhausen's movies.
Yes.
And he was the composer of some of the best ones.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Harryhausen came to my house and visited here one time.
Wow.
So I knew him on a friendly basis.
That's
but I
amazing.
couldn't have afforded him for the animation
Right.
on that picture. But, it was kind of the last throes of animation that way because now everything's done digitally on the computer.
Right. Did you always want?
They put everybody who did that kind of work out of business.
Yeah.
And my friend Rick Baker, who's the makeup genius,
Yes.
who won 7 Oscars.
Yes.
He retired because he said they don't need me to do the makeup anymore because they could do it on the computer.
Yeah, it's sad. I know, and it doesn't look as good at all. Was Q always going?
Everything looks like a cartoon.
Right.
If you see a movie, half of it looks like a cartoon.
Right. You can't believe anything's real or that like they're actually in a room or interacting with these things. You could just see them as animated characters.
Now that doesn't seem to hurt the box office.
No, it doesn't, does it?
People turn out for these things, but personally, I'm not interested in those kind of pictures. And I'm not interested in those big special effects pictures because you don't really direct the picture. You collaborate with a bunch of other people. And if you look at all these movies, they all look the same. If you go to a movie theater and all the trailers come on for 2 or 3 or 4 movies, every movie looks exactly like every other movie. They don't have any individuality anymore because they're all animated and created by the same digital effects house. And so there's no mark of the director on there. Did
you always want Q to be stop motion? Or were there other methods?
I didn't see any other choice.
Yeah. What was your first reaction the first time you saw the movie with the completed effects?
Well, I'd seen it all along, The agonizing part of that movie was not shooting it, but waiting for the effects people to finish doing the job because they would only do maybe 15 seconds or 30 seconds every week.
Right.
So you had to drive all the way out to the valley to their office to see what they'd done. And because there was they couldn't transmit it over the computer like they can today.
You're right.
So you'd have to go out there to see it. And you drive all the way out to see 30 seconds,
Yeah.
And then you had to come back the next week. So it was tedious. But, they did a good job.
They did.
They were really good people. They were nominated for an Academy Award very shortly thereafter for young Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
So the same people.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I had good people, but they're a certain type of personality. They don't mind sitting in a room doing this tiny work, of animating these clay figures, and they don't seem to mind spending so much time on it. But to me, it was so tedious.
Do you have any advice that anyone would set out to make a stop motion monster movie, or do you think that those things are just kind of in the past? And
I don't think you can find any more stop motion people around.
Yeah, that's a shame. I love it so much.
It's a lost art, I think.
Yeah, and I love it so much. I love those old movies. If Q had a bigger budget, did you have any scenes in mind that couldn't be realized with the budget you had?
No, I did everything I could have done. I mean, if it had been a studio movie, it would have cost like $10 million to make.
Yeah.
Because they would have wanted to build the top of the Chrysler building,
right.
And they would have wanted to build this tomorrow. But we actually shot up on top of the Chrysler building, 88 stories above the street. You could feel the building moving back and forth in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to go up this little narrow ladder that you see in the picture that would take us up one level, another little ladder that takes you up another level, and then go up the third level, and then finally into the needle. So nobody that I know in New York City has ever been up at the tip of the Chrysler building except me.
Wow. Now, you left the door open there for a sequel, which you do with a lot of your films. Was that ever really considered, or did you just see that as like a classic monster movie ending with the egg?
Yeah, I thought it was a good ending, and it was stolen by the Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
It was stolen by Roland Emmerich made one, and
I saw that.
The last shot in his monster movie was the egg bursting open.
Right.
Exactly from my picture,
You're right.
A lot of big budget pictures have borrowed stuff from my film.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
They call it a homage.
Right.
I call it burglary.
Yeah. Now, another one I watched recently was The Stuff. How did that idea come about?
Well, I saw all these products on the market that were poisonous.
Yeah.
And they just don't take them off the market. They get away with it, So I thought somebody should make a movie about what the corporations do to the public and how people are tricked into buying something which is really harmful. Today, if you look at television, almost every other commercial is for some medication that is followed by a disclaimer telling you the side effects.
Right, yeah.
And some of those side effects are death.
Yeah.
So they're trying to sell you stuff that'll kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't give a damn whether you die or not. They just want you to buy it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Did you write the commercial jingle that's used in the movie? It's pretty catchy.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did.
Good job. It does the trick. I saw there's a Maniac Cop remake in the works. Did you have any involvement with that?
I don't think there really is going to be one, but
is that right?
I'm not attached to it.
Yeah.
They didn't ask me to write it. They screwed up the third one. I wrote a script, but they deviated from the script and changed a lot of stuff. And then they fired Bill Lustig, who was the director, and they made a mess out of the third one. And then this next one they were talking about doing, they never came up with the financing.
But is that right?
They didn't ask me to write the script. So they got a script that isn't particularly good. And they weren't able to raise the money. So if they came back to me and said, we'd like to have you write a script for another Maniac Cop, and we'll stick with the script and treat you decently, I would be glad to do it, of course. Why not? But so far they haven't approached me.
Now, if you had written a Maniac Cop script today, do you think you might include some timely elements such as the Black Lives Matter movement or the Blue Lives Matter? They have a lot going on now about anti-police sentiment, people being afraid of the police pulling.
We had all that in Black Caesar that I wrote 40 years ago. The villains were the police.
Yeah.
And the villains were violent cops who killed black people. And so I dealt with that a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that all these years later, the same problems still exist.
Yeah, and it's with the way the media is now that people can record these incidents with their phones, and people are becoming more and more aware of it because everybody's got a camera these days, and they're not getting away with this stuff.
Yeah, well, they still do it though. I mean, I'm amazed.
Yeah.
And even though the police officers know that they could be watched and they could be held accountable, that they still do these stupid things. But cops are afraid. They're scared. They're scared they're going to get shot. So, but if you're that afraid of the consequences, then you should turn your badge in and get a job doing something else. You can't go out there with a hand on your gun because you're so afraid, particularly of black people, that you're going to get killed if you approach a black person. But I remember the time in America where if white people were walking down the street and they saw black people coming up the street, they would cross the street.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't get close to them. They were afraid of them.
Yeah.
And that's what the Bone was about. It was about the fact that white people are just afraid of blackness. That's all. And the black people take advantage of it sometimes, as they should. So, what can you say?
Yeah. There's Tom Atkins has a line in the movie. A guard comes out in a uniform and he says, "Oh, you scared me. You're wearing in that uniform." And it just had me thinking today that that's like a real fear that people have now of the police. Like they're supposed to be there to help, but now people are kind of worried about how they're going to react.
I don't understand how a cop can shoot a man in a car when he's got his girlfriend next to him and a baby in the back seat.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you even think of shooting a man?
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Except that you're absolutely terrified. And when people are terrified, the rationality goes out the window.
Between God Told Me To and Maniac Cop, there's the common thread of the St. Paddy's Day parade. I was wondering if you had any experience with the St. Paddy's Day parade that kind of led you to have these, chaotic situations in your movies about them.
Well, I just thought it'd be great to have something happen in the middle of 5,000 cops.
Yeah.
Thought, wow, that's terrific. You're going to have a shooting. Have it right in the middle of 5,000 cops, and have crazy Andy Kaufman in the picture too to do it. Because when I told him what the plan was, he realized he had finally met someone who was crazier than he was. So, and that wasn't easy to be. But and then the fact that it turned up in the Maniac Cop movie was just a coincidence. They happened to be shooting at the same time as the parade, so they went and shot a couple of shots at the parade.
Oh, okay.
They didn't integrate it into the picture. It had no real relevance because they didn't understand how to fix it so that it was part of the texture of the whole picture. So it was just extraneous.
Yeah, it's mentioned there, and you kind of get a couple shots of people in the parade, and then it goes into something else entirely. They go to the pier to have the showdown and everything.
Yeah, I mean, he just put it in.
Yeah.
Bill Lustig, and he maybe has some kind of a little homage to me or something, but it didn't have any significance really.
Now, something I'd like to ask as a director. I make some pretty low budget pictures myself, but one problem I've had is if I'm directing an actor, and I'll tell them something like, I need more volume, and we do 5 takes and they just keep the same volume, or it could be a monotone thing or just an emotion that I feel like is not working. If you keep getting the same result take after take after take, what do you do to get what you want out of these actors?
Well, it doesn't happen to me very much.
Okay.
Usually they listen to me because
Yeah.
I wrote the script, and I've made a lot of films, and they've come to respect me and also realize that I'm the sole voice of authority on the picture.
Right.
There's nobody else to turn to, so they generally do what I ask them to do. But I don't talk to them that much about volume. I just get their attention, and I take my hand and I just kind of lower my hand. And they see me lower my hand. They know what I mean. Play it down, play it less, give me less, and they see that, and that's all the direction I give, and they get it. So it just, you got to start off with a relationship with the actors to start with, where they want to please you, And if you get people that don't want to please you,
Yeah.
then they shouldn't be in the movie.
Yeah, right? Tell me about it. What's the one favorite performance from any of your movies? Are there any like performances that stand out to you as that you just watched it and you're just like, that's exactly what I had in mind when I wrote it, and I couldn't be more.
Well, Michael Moriarty in Q is probably the best performance of the bunch.
Okay.
Yavik Toto was wonderful in Bone, and Tony LaBianca was wonderful in God Told Me.
Yeah, he was.
So, many of these actors are quoted as saying that they gave their best performances in my movies. So that's a compliment, because these people have worked in scores of movies, many directors, and they still think they gave their best work to me. So I guess maybe I earned it, maybe I didn't.
All right, sir. Well, I have just about run out of time. Well, those are all the questions I had prepared. So I do want to thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. Again,
I'll let everybody know that King Cohen is opening in New York City, in Greenwich Village.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Friday, I believe.
Friday.
Yeah, this week. Friday, this week in New York City.
Yeah.
And they can see the picture there.
Yeah.
And as I said, we got 100% in Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I'll help promote it. Yeah, I'll help promote it. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it myself. And again, I'm sure you've been around and hear this a lot, but I mean, you've done so much, and I've watched a bunch of these movies and just recently revisiting them, and they all still hold up, and it's a lot of fun. And I want
to. People want to see my movies. They just go to Netflix or Hulu or whatever, and some of them have this system where they just say something out loud.
Oh yeah.
And the machine picks it up. And if they go to the Hulu or the Netflix or the Amazon and they say Larry Cohen, my picture comes up, and along with it, there's 14 or 15 of my movies that are listed, and you can order any one of them at home immediately for a couple of bucks. All you got to do is order it, and you can see the picture. So all these movies are available at everybody's home anytime they want to see them. All they got to do is say my name, there's the pictures, and they can see the picture, and the cost is negligible. It's so much better than having to go to a video store and buy something and then return it later on. This is a miracle, and it's wonderful for me because my movies are all available now to everybody anytime they want to see them. You just pop up my name, and there it is. So, I hope you'll tell your listeners to take a shot at it, see if they like these movies.
Yeah, I didn't know about the voice recognition thing. I'll have to try that out.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, I couldn't believe it myself when I saw it the first time. I was so pleased that the films are available to people. But all you really want is for people to see your movie. Yeah, that's why you make it. You make it so that people will see it.
Absolutely. Well, sir, thank you so much for all the work you've done.
Well, thanks for the interview. I'll say goodbye now then. Okay.
All right, sir. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
So that's right. You can check out all of Larry's films if you go to Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, using Amazon Alexa, using your Echo Dot, whatever you have. You can just search Larry Cohen and all his films will come up. If you have Amazon Prime, there are some available for Amazon Prime. If you have Shudder, I believe there are some also available for Shudder. So there's different networks where you can actually find some of his films. Because if you haven't scratched the surface of his films yet, what the hell are you doing? Go watch them now. Catch you guys in the next one.